So the new album is Feel So Good, Feel So Bad. It came out a couple of weeks ago, right? What'd you do on the day that it was released? Anything exciting?
We were on tour, so we played a festival that day.
Ooh, whereabouts?
Let me see. At that point, we were kind of at the beginning of that tour cycle, if you will. We were doing the West Coast, and on the day the album came out, we were at Treefort Music Festival in Boise, Idaho.
Oh, in Boise. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And what's the vibe like out there? Are people enjoying themselves? Or are they kind of wary about being around other people, or what?
Yeah, I'd say probably a mixture of both. Definitely everybody seems like they're still wary, but yeah, just no one knows what the hell's going on.
That sums it up nicely. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. All righty. Now, my understanding is that when you went to make this album, you guys had some downtime, obviously, because of COVID and all that, and it kind of changed the way you thought about the band, and you kind of looking at it as a rebirth of the band because of these jobs that you got in Portland. So, give me a little background on that, if you will.
Well, I'd say it was more like a rediscovery of some kind of center around having so much time to dig into recording. I think that's what really kind of made us shift gears, was when we weren't able to play shows at all. We really just dove into songwriting and recording, which we always did before, but we always tried to stay so busy on tour that we just never had this much time to devote to it. So that was really cool, an unexpected like silver lining of the pandemic, I'd say.
So when I was listening to the record overall, because there's all sorts of influences I'm hearing, there's kind of psychedelic rock and girl group stuff and all that. And at one point I was thinking, it almost sounds like the Amboy Dukes meet the Shirelles, which is kind of, so how do you describe what the band sounds like these days?
Yeah, that's always a tough one. I usually just say it's, if someone asks what kind of band we are, what kind of music we play, I usually just say rock and roll, because it's hard to kind of define, and everybody's got their own preconceptions of what something like psychedelic or garage means. But all those labels, could certainly apply. It's also hard for me to see it. I'm in like the least objective position from which to see what we actually sound like. I'm a little too close to it, I'd say, to really be able to say.
So when you guys go into the studio, how do you work together? Who is somebody in charge? Is it all kind of equal, or do people take on different roles? How does it work?
Yeah. Well, usually before we get into the studio, we've been working for several months at home doing demos and writing the songs. So usually by the time we get to the studio, everyone has a pretty clear idea of exactly what we're going to do. And we just go in there and kind of bang it out. Everybody knows more or less their role, in terms of like, everything from the live tracking to the overdubs. We've done it enough where it flows pretty easily, where we don't necessarily need to have someone who's like, hey, we got to stay on track and like, tapping their watch. But because we're all motivated to do it as well and as quickly as possible. Studio time's expensive and all that.
You have a producer you work with, right, Cameron?
Yeah. We made the last 2 LPs with him, and yeah, he's a great dude. He's been a friend of ours for a long time, someone that we knew from the music scene in Portland, and yeah, it's been great. So
what does he do? What is his role as producer? Because that could be anything,
Yeah, totally, right. It's a pretty vague term. Yeah, well, I mean, that's a really good question. I guess there's a lot of things, but well, a huge thing that Cameron does is engineer everything. So he really is the one that's determining, as everything goes on the tape or into the computer or whatever, what it's sounding like. And he's also been the one to mix those 2 albums. I mean, we mix them together, but he's the one sitting at the computer. He's the one that is, the engineer, definitely. So that's a big part of it.
You guys are pretty fond of the reverb, aren't you?
No kidding. Yeah.
So who adds that? Is it him or you guys, or do you kind of fiddle around with it and figure out how
I
much you
think
want?
that I think that was there before Cameron was around. Yeah, for sure.
Right. So the album leads off with a track called "Feel So Bad." Um, why it's kind of got a little bit of everything: some power pop, some psychedelic stuff, good rock and riff. Why is that leading off the record?
That was a suggestion from Cam.
Okay.
So that's
There you
another
go.
thing. That's another thing. I mean, not that like he's writing the track list, but he's just working on it with us. So if he has an idea for a song, or an idea for a part in a song, or just he's kind of constantly giving us feedback. Not that him as the producer has the final say or anything like that. It's definitely like a group collaborative effort. And we always pretty much wind up agreeing on what's best at some point. But he helps us talk through it, and he's definitely a kind of more of an outside perspective, which I think is helpful in those situations. Us, the band, writing the songs and all that. It's easy to get really close to it. It's hard to stay objective in any way.
Yep.
So it's nice to have that voice there in the studio with us.
A little perspective is good, eh?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, there's a tune called Undone, which is the second one, which I believe Kristen sings. So because she's singing, does that indicate that she maybe wrote more of it, or how does that work within the band?
Yeah, definitely. She definitely is the one that wrote that song. And I would say, I don't know, it's not like we have a rule where like if you wrote it, you sing it or whatever. We always just, wind up going with, again, we usually agree on what sounds best, who's singing what. But at the same time, that does happen kind of naturally with when Kristen writes a song. It's like, oh, it sounds great. She's singing it. She wrote it. Like, that's how it should be on the record, obviously. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So yeah, that one she did write. I think Kristen wrote probably over half or just over half of the songs on the album.
And I see this video that was shot. Was it shot someplace called the Liftoff Lounge?
Oh yeah. which is a place down the street. It's our friend's place in Portland. And they were nice enough to let us go in there and make like a music video.
So who oversees the music video stuff?
Yeah, good question.
We're trying.
Yeah. I mean, kind of everybody a little bit. The band, and then on a couple of the videos for this album, we worked with a friend of ours from California named Claude Cardenas, and he was the one that did that video and one of the other ones. And then a friend of ours here in town who's another like person that makes shoots and directs videos, named Omar Cervantes. He did two of the other videos. We had an animated one on this album for the first time, which was another friend of ours in Portland, Casey Jarman. So it's just a lot of just a lot of collaborations with people that we know, people that we've worked with in the past, people that we know that we trust, like artistically,
While we're on the subject of videos, looks like he went to some kind of old Western town for My Baby Don't. What was going on there?
Yeah, that was a bunch of different places actually. Claude, who made that video, he also made the Undone video.
Okay.
He came up to Portland, and it was that same trip. We shot all those in like 3 or 4 days. And we took a trip along this kind of historic highway that goes across Oregon. And there's a bunch of old like railroad towns that have since disappeared, or mining towns, or kind of just a lot of ghost towns. And so that video was shot along that route. A lot of it was also in the John Day fossil beds, which is a national park in Oregon. Painted Hills, all that. Really beautiful place.
Cool. And one track I wanted to touch on was Rock Me Baby. It's got some pummeling drums and pretty cool guitar solo going on in there, and plenty of reverb as well. What can you tell me about that?
Yeah, that was another one that Kristen came up with, and she came up with it like very close to when we were about to start recording the album. So, but we really wanted to put it on the album, so we made sure that we slipped it in there. We learned it real quick, and just got it in the mix with all the other songs, just in time to get it on there. But that's one of my favorite ones on the album. It being a song that Kristen wrote, it makes sense that it has, the drum intro.
So yeah. she likes to pound those things, huh?
Yeah. So that's all that really comes to mind about that one. But yeah, that's one of my favorites for sure on that album.
So the band has been going for quite a while, since you guys were in high school, right? And people change over the course of 15 years or so. So has the band changed along with that, do you think?
I would say so. Yeah. I mean, it's inevitable, right?
Right.
And like all bands kind of have to change. I mean, if you think about putting stuff out, I mean, not necessarily, but I think people get heavily criticized for trying to do the same thing over and over, or if they're perceived as trying to do the same thing over and over.
Yep. Of course, they also get criticized for changing too much,
for trying anything else. So it's a pretty fine line you have to, balance. But I think that I don't know, that there's ways that it can be, that trying new things can be more organic, and there's ways that it can be more like out of the blue and shocking. And I think we try and do it. I guess we try and, I don't think really that we try and do anything. I think that we have always just kind of like written songs that, we just write songs, and then the ones that we like, we play.
Right.
And so they've changed as we've changed, but there's not anything like intentional where like, we were trying to do this thing and now we're trying to do this thing. It's always just kind of like what comes to mind, and what we decide we like and latch onto and start playing.
Right. Now, when you were back in high school, what were you listening to? I'm guessing that you're heavily into 60s rock, and that stuff, but were you listening to that then, and how did you get exposed to that?
Yeah, definitely. I would say that's where a lot of that stuff started. Just we went to like a art magnet school, I guess you'd call it, where so we had a lot of time during the day doing arts projects, and so we started doing music projects, started doing recording projects, and so this group kind of more or less formed through that, various performance or recording music projects over the first couple of years of high school.
Right.
And during that time, we knew about like the classic rock, think about when you're 13, 14, 15, we're listening to Black Sabbath and Ozzy and just whatever, I don't know, AC/DC. But I think a big one was like, we started not very long after that, started listening to Velvet Underground.
Right.
And which I think kind of got us into a whole lot of other kinds of things, and kind of just opened a door to realizing that you can listen to any kind of thing, play whatever kind of music you want, but there's so much out there. So now we'll just listen to a ton of stuff.
But none of that was contemporary at the time. I'm guessing this is around 2000, 2005 or somewhere in there. I mean, there's drum and bass, there's pop music, there's, hip hop, all this stuff. None of that appealed to you?
Yeah, this is like 2005 to 2009.
Right.
But there of the contemporary stuff at that time, we were definitely listening to stuff, but it was like, I mean, that was a interesting time for like rock and roll music in the mainstream, because
Right.
it was kind of rare to have some group like the Strokes. You know what I mean?
Right.
So there were those groups like that I think we were kind of like, oh well, we listen to all of this old stuff and all this stuff from kind of all over the place, music from every decade. But like there is this common thread that runs through it all that you could still see, and that you now can still see, if not even better. I don't know, that common thread at least still exists.
All right. Cool. So, what's the band thinking about in the future? You got plans, or are you just kind of dealing with this record at the time?
Yeah, I mean, everything's been determined by the pandemic, more or less.
Yeah.
We did manage to go on tour last year, between the Delta and Omicron, waves.
Right.
Things opened up and we were on tour for a few months around the States. We did a tour in Mexico. Everything went great. And then, since, New Year's and the winter here and Omicron and everything, stuff kind of shut down again. So, but we've just been writing songs, starting to work on whatever's going to come next, whatever is the next album, whatever is the next recording projects. And, thinking about the spring, hopefully we'll be able to get back and play a bunch more shows. So everything's kind of tentative, as it's been for so long now, what feels like so long now, but we're pretty much ready to just, whenever we can, get back out there. And in the meantime, we're just writing songs and recording, hanging out with the dog,
Hanging out with the dog,
enjoying being home for a while.
Yeah, definitely. Very cool.
Yeah.
Excellent. All righty. Well, hopefully at some point, and you can even make it down here to this part of the world. We'd love to see some international acts finally show up again, because it's been a while.
We would love to. We would absolutely love to come down.
All righty. Well, thanks for taking time talking to me. I appreciate it.
Hey, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Good luck with everything.
Thank you. You too.
All right. See ya. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.